Ever wonder why we have public trials, or why we believe punishments should fit the crime? It might seem like common sense today, but just a few centuries ago, the world of justice was a very different and much scarier place. Secret accusations, brutal torture, and punishments that were more about revenge than justice were the norm. Then, one man wrote a short book that would change everything. His name was Cesare Beccaria, and he is rightfully called the father of modern criminal justice. Let's travel back to the mid-1700s. Europe's legal systems were a mess. If someone accused you of a crime, you could be dragged away without knowing who your accuser was, put on trial in secret, and subjected to horrific torture to extract a confession. The punishments were often wildly disproportionate and cruel. The entire system was built on the idea of retribution, the state acting as an instrument of divine vengeance. Crime was seen as a sin, and the punishment was God's wrath delivered by man. But the Enlightenment was dawning, a time of reason and new ideas about society. In this environment, a young Italian nobleman, Cesare Beccaria, published a treatise in 1760 titled On Crimes and Punishments. It was short, anonymous at first, but its impact was explosive. It didn't just criticize the old system. It proposed a revolutionary new one, shifting the entire focus of justice from revenge to prevention. So, what was Beccaria's big idea? It all started with the concept of the social contract, an idea popularized by thinkers like Rousseau. Before Beccaria, kings and rulers claimed a divine right to power. Beccaria threw that out. He argued that governments don't get their power from God. They get it from us, the people. We all agree to give up a tiny piece of our absolute freedom, like the freedom to just take whatever we want in exchange for the safety and peace of living in an organized society. This led to a radical conclusion about the state's power. If the government's authority comes from the people for the purpose of ensuring safety, then its power to punish is strictly limited. The state only has the right to punish someone just enough to protect public safety. Any punishment that goes beyond what is absolutely necessary is not justice, it's tyranny. This was a direct challenge to the entire foundation of European law. From this core philosophy, Beccaria built what we now call the Classical School of Criminology. He saw criminals not as possessed demons or hopeless sinners, but as rational actors. He believed people have free will and make calculated decisions. They weigh the potential pleasure or benefit of a crime against its potential pain or cost. Therefore, to stop crime, you don't need divine fury. You need a smart system of punishments that makes crime a bad deal. This led to his 3 pillars of deterrence, ideas so modern they form the basis of criminology today. He said for a punishment to work, it needs 3 things: certainty, celerity, and severity. First, certainty. This was the most important one for Beccaria. It's the simple idea that if you commit a crime, you will get caught and punished. It's not about how harsh the punishment is, but how likely it is to happen. He famously wrote that the certainty of a small punishment will make a stronger impression than the fear of one more severe, if attended with the hope of escaping. Think about it. Would you be more likely to speed if there was a 100% chance of getting a small $50 ticket, or a 1% chance of losing your license for a year? Most people would be deterred by the certainty of the small fine. The hope of getting away with it is what encourages crime. Second, celerity, or swiftness. For a punishment to be an effective deterrent, it needs to happen quickly after the crime. The longer the delay between the criminal act and the punishment, the weaker the connection is in the person's mind. If a trial drags on for years, the punishment feels disconnected from the original action. A swift punishment reinforces the lesson. You do this, and this happens right away. It creates a clear cause and effect relationship in the mind of the criminal and the public. Third, and finally, severity. This is where Beccaria really broke from the past. He argued that punishment should only be severe enough to outweigh the benefit of the crime, and no more. The goal isn't to inflict suffering. It's to tip the scales of that rational calculation we talked about. If stealing $10 gets you a punishment that feels like an $11 loss, a rational person won't do it. But if stealing $10 gets you the death penalty, the system is no longer about deterrence. It's about brutal, excessive force. This idea of proportionality is a cornerstone of modern justice. Armed with these principles, Beccaria took aim at two of the most horrific practices of his time: torture and the death penalty. He argued that torture was completely useless for discovering the truth. It wasn't a test of guilt or innocence. It was a test of physical endurance. He pointed out the deep psychological flaw. A strong, guilty person with a high pain tolerance could endure the torture, be declared innocent, and walk free. Meanwhile, a weak, innocent person with a low pain threshold would confess to anything just to make the pain stop, and would then be condemned. As Beccaria put it, torture was a system designed to acquit the strong villain and condemn the weak innocent. It was not only cruel, it was fundamentally illogical. His arguments against the death penalty were even more revolutionary. Beccaria is considered one of the very first prominent abolitionists in Western history. He saw a profound hypocrisy in the state punishing murder. By committing a state-sanctioned murder itself, how can the law, which is meant to protect life, take a life to do so? But he didn't just make a moral argument. He also made a practical one based on his theory of deterrence. He argued that the death penalty was a poor deterrent because it was too quick and momentary. It's a brief spectacle, but it doesn't create a lasting impression of fear. What, he asked, would be a better deterrent? He proposed perpetual slavery, or what we would call life imprisonment with hard labor. The idea of a lifetime spent in misery, losing your freedom forever, and working day after day in full view of the public, he argued, was a much more terrifying and enduring prospect for a potential criminal than a single moment of death. This was a powerful psychological argument that still resonates in debates today. The impact on crimes and punishments was immediate and immense. The book was translated into multiple languages and read by intellectuals and rulers across Europe and America. Figures like Voltaire championed it. Catherine the Great of Russia and Maria Theresa of Austria-Hungary incorporated some of his ideas into their legal reforms. But perhaps nowhere was his influence greater than in the founding of the United States. The American founders were obsessed with Beccaria's work. Thomas Jefferson quoted him. John Adams cited him in his defense of the British soldiers after the Boston Massacre. and his ideas are woven directly into the fabric of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. When the Sixth Amendment guarantees the right to a speedy and public trial, and the right to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, that's pure Beccaria, a direct rejection of the secret trials and accusations he fought against. And when the Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishments, it is the embodiment of Beccaria's central principle of proportionality, the idea that the punishment must fit the crime, that it should not be excessive or tyrannical, is the philosophical bedrock of that amendment. He single-handedly provided the intellectual framework for a more humane and rational system of justice. So let's just summarize the massive shift he created. Before Beccaria, justice was about revenge, driven by arbitrary and religious laws, with secret trials, torture, and extreme punishments. The criminal was seen as a sinner. After Beccaria, the purpose of justice became prevention, guided by clear, written, secular laws. Trials became public, punishments became proportional, and the criminal was viewed as a rational person who makes choices. Cesare Beccaria was more than just a legal reformer. He was a psychologist, a sociologist, and a political philosopher who dragged the justice system out of the Dark Ages and into the light of reason. The principles he laid out over 150 years ago, certainty, swiftness, and proportionality, the opposition to torture and secret trials are the very principles we still strive to uphold in our legal systems today. The next time you hear about the right to a fair trial or debate the purpose of punishment, remember the young Italian thinker who dared to argue that justice should be a tool for creating a safer society, not a weapon for revenge. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this dive into the history of justice interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the ideas that shaped our world. See you in the next one.